We'll start the night by acknowledging the land that we are gathered on is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Six Nations, and Anishinaabe. We acknowledge traditional territories in this manner as a sign of recognition and respect of Indigenous people who have been on this land for hundreds of years and who continue to have presence. The recognition of the contribution and historic importance of Indigenous people must be clearly and overtly connected to our collective commitment to truth and reconciliation. We must promise in our communities, and in particular, we need to bring justice for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls across this country, as well as bring justice to all of the children who suffered physical, mental abuse, along with death because of residential schools. Please take this spirit with you of truth and reconciliation and reflect on the differences that your personal commitment can make. Every individual has the right to dignity and respect. The responsibility of creating and preserving a safe and harassment-free environment is a collective one assumed by all. It is important for us to create an inclusive place for all, regardless of their background, race, gender, or any other reason. In doing this, we create a positive environment where everyone feels safe and valued. We will not tolerate any bullying or harassment or violence within this setting. Failing to follow these expectations may result in removal and future sanctions at community events taking place here. All right, now that I got done my bully talk, we're good. So, tonight, the all candidates meeting, I'm going to read the protocol on how tonight is going to take place. To participate in an all candidates meeting, candidates must attend in person. Hence, we are missing 2, unfortunately. Candidates are expected to be respectful of each other and avoid using insulting, offensive, or prejudicial language. The moderator, which is me, Brent Thompson, will strictly enforce time allotments. Candidates will withdraw for their seat location, which they just did at 10 to 6. The duration of each candidate's meeting may vary depending on the number of candidates. Equal time to a maximum of 1 minute per candidate will be allowed for answers, not including the time for any opening and concluding remarks. The timer starts when the candidate begins speaking. The moderator will introduce the candidates and then describe what will happen in the meeting. Well, I'm going to do this backwards. I'm going to describe what's going on, and then I'll introduce the candidates. So I can't even follow my own rules. My apologies. So the moderator cannot read a prepared statement for candidates who do not attend a meeting in person. The speaking order will go from the left to the right, so that's your left to right, not ours. And then one question asked, the candidate will have 1 minute response time, followed by a counter by candidates left to right for 30 seconds. Finally, the first responder will deliver their own rebuttal for 45 seconds. During the response, debaters, may not bring up any new arguments or new evidence except in direct refutation of material that has already been presented. Members will speak only when called upon by the moderator. There will be no heckling. There will be no points of order or points of privilege rose. There's no props minus the signs that we have allowed. And they will have they'll have a 2-minute opening and a 2-minute closing remarks. Thank you. So now I'm going to introduce the candidate. Well, actually, I'm going to introduce a lot of people. First of all, I'm Brent Thompson. I'm the moderator. I've kind of forgot that part. Beside me is the official timekeeper, Melissa Holden, who is the vice president of the local. The one that's trying to make me sound good is the financial secretary, Scott Bradford, who's sitting in the bar, which is not open. And then outside of that, thank you to everybody that has attended. So first, doing a 1 minute or 2 minute opening is Bernie Martin from the Liberal Party. Bernie, please go ahead.
Thank you, Brent, and thank you to Unifor 636 for hosting us tonight and for Rogers TV. Are we on, Brent? Yes. I'm asking for an increased volume from the back. So, and for Rogers TV for recording this for people who are at home. My name's Bernie Martin. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a mom, I'm a local business owner, and I'm an elected official here in Woodstock and Oxford County, and I'm running because of my personal experience with Doug Ford as a leader, is a person who puts things ahead of people, and I'm a person who wants to put people first. Like you, I have been personally feeling the debilitating effects of Doug Ford's government, of our housing crisis, a broken healthcare system, crumbling education structure, and a homelessness emergency. You need an MPP and a provincial government that will partner with municipalities to strengthen our quality of life. We need to tackle the root cause of homelessness. The Conservative policies have left 80,000 people homeless in Ontario. And currently right here in Oxford, the list exceeds 150 names of people who are homeless. We need investment in social housing, mental health and addiction services, and basic income support to keep people from falling into homelessness. We all deserve a community that is safe and healthy. Is Oxford better off today than it was 7 years ago? I have a realistic plan to reprioritize spending in Ontario and address the alarming issues that we're facing every day. I look forward to sharing the details of this plan with you tonight, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Next, we have Peter Beamers from the from the New Blue Party of Ontario. Go ahead.
Thank you to Unifor for the invitation to present not only myself, but the New Blue Party of Ontario to the people of Oxford. To the people of Oxford, my name is Peter Beamers. I am your candidate for the New Blue Party. We are a grassroots movement that was started so that the people of Ontario could have a conservative option when it came time to elect. For the last 30 years, we in Oxford have had a PC party representing us in Toronto, which is no longer, as some of you may have realized, no longer conservative. Some of you are probably even younger than the PC party has been in power here in Oxford. Under Doug Ford's PCs, life in Ontario has gotten much more expensive. Saving for retirement has become harder, and the thought of saving for a new home for a young couple has become extinct. This has happened under Ford's PC watch. The New Blue Party desires to work for you to make life more affordable. This begins with the elimination of the carbon tax. The PCs ran in 2022 under the promise to do the same, yet post-election said, just kidding, and added their own provincial industrial carbon tax. Along with the elimination of the carbon tax, we will also work to reduce the HST from 13 to 10%. This 3% savings coupled with the elimination of the carbon tax means that you will have an easier time paying your monthly bills while not having to cut back on the grocery bill. Those savings can now be reinvested into your family, buying much needed coats and boots for the kids, some school supplies and whatnot. I could say much more, but I believe I'm out of time, so thank you.
And next, we have Grace Harper from the Ontario Party.
Welcome, everyone, and those watching online, thank you for sharing your time with us. Thank you to the organizers for hosting this event. The Ontario Party is led by Derek Sloan. Recently, Randy Hillier and Tom Rassel have joined forces. The Ontario Party leaders have a proven track record of supporting their constituents over the party whip. In 2020, Derek was removed as an elected official from Parliament due to disagreement with party leadership. Derek stood against lockdowns, defended our constitutional rights, and stood up for small businesses. His position was that the party belonged to you, the voter, and he encouraged members to use their voice to represent true conservative values. Randy Hillier had a similar experience. Derek and Randy refused to be whipped by party executives to vote the party line versus their constituents' best interest. Hence, the Ontario Party has a policy of not whipping the votes. MPPs represent the riding and work for the people. On January 29th, I listened to Mr. Ford's election speak. He spoke about the tariffs, but promised nothing about adding police to secure the border or addressing the fentanyl drug crisis. He said nothing about improving health care by bringing back the workers who were fired. He promised $23 billion in new spending in addition to $200 checks to buy our votes. Doug Ford needs to know our votes are not for sale. Doug Ford rules like a king who requires obedience from his servants. The Ontario Party believes government is not the master of the people, but must serve the people. We remember when leaders, including Doug Ford, stripped us of our God-given freedoms. We must ensure they never are allowed to do that again. This election is a turning point. If we accept a weak leadership, we will continue to suffer. If we demand better, we will build better an Ontario that puts people first. If you believe in lower taxes, strong healthcare, secure borders, and true provincial sovereignty, then I ask you to vote for Grace Harper.
And from the NDP party, we have Khadidra Halliroot.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and I want to welcome you all for coming. My name is Khadija Haliru, and I come from Ingersoll. I'm a current sitting councillor. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, and I'm a resident of Oxford County. I'm running because I'm very passionate, and the issues of the time are very personal to me. When I take a look at what's happening in the province, I go back, say 20 years when I was actually a physician's recruiter in Ontario. We had a cap during the last Liberal government, and that started to have hallway, medicine. I basically attracted a lot of doctors from out of province because the ones we had here had to leave out of province to get those certificates to allow them to practice. I come from a time where people would actually give students an opportunity to go to school whether they could afford it or not. Children were going into school for social work, for nursing, for medicine, and Ford came in and made it worse by cutting those spendings, cutting tuition to colleges. No wonder they started to rely on international students to survive. So I see a gap that was created by the cuts to education, to healthcare. I see a gap that was cut through school boards. I was on the PTA when we fought for funding. Ford came and made it worse. ECEs were let go. So everything that I'm personally connected to, I realize this government has just made worse. So I'm running because I feel like we need to prioritize our government again. Ford has just woken up from his slumber and realized Trump won, and now decides that he's against Trump. He was very, very supportive of Trump and knew everything, everybody knew about the tariffs that were coming. And until the tariffs came, he says, you know what? He wasn't sure they were going to come, and now it's like a slap in the face. We all knew the tariffs were coming. So now we can't trust Ford to get us out of this mess. We should have a premier at the table right now trying to work on EI, trying to defend workers, trying to protect workers if they lose their jobs. Not clear on us.
Thank you very much, Ms. Haliru. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on to the first question. And I want to make note that all the questions come from all the constituents within the community, and I thank you very much for that. We had a bunch of good questions. Question number one for Ms. Bernier Martin. Municipalities are struggling with infrastructure costs, housing pressures, and economic development. Yet many feel the province is downloading responsibilities without providing adequate funding. What specific steps would you take to ensure municipalities have the resource and autonomy needed to address local challenges effectively?
Thank you very much, Brent. This is a really timely question, given that this week in our municipal report, we have the urgency is now that ER visits are up, which means that paramedic calls are up. We need, and I am ready to implement a program where we are going to tackle the root causes of homelessness, restore provincial funding for social housing, funding for mental health and addiction services, and double ODSP rates. And when we do these things, we release the burden on our municipal tax base, which is your municipal tax dollar, because it is policing, it is fire calls, it is ambulance calls that are increasing your tax dollars, that when we can mitigate those costs and provide the services to people who need them, then that softens the impact on your shoulders as a municipal taxpayer.
Mr. Beamers, 30 seconds, please.
To answer the same question, basically.
What Ms. Martin said.
I think all of those are great. We need to get help and resources to the people that need it. I think part of doing that may be to reduce the administration costs and to really target, as you said, the cause of homelessness. There's much that could be done. I think I'm out of time. Yep. Yeah, I'm just going to...
Ms. Harper, 30 seconds to rebut what Ms. Martin said, please.
Yes, that's very true. Homelessness and economic issues are certainly the issue in all communities. We have to work together, align with the municipalities and the mayors and you, the voters of Oxford, and come up with some ideas. The Ontario Party wants to reduce taxes by the PS tax by 3%, which will put money back in your pocket. That eventually goes on to help the businesses for economic recovery, and if the businesses are...
Ms. Haliru, 30 seconds to rebut, please.
Thank you. I totally agree. We need more money coming to the provinces, through the provinces to the municipalities. The downloading has been too much. We as councillors have been to Roma, Rural Ontario Municipal Council. We've advocated for funding, for infrastructure, for housing, and we've been denied. As a town of Ingersoll, we've actually been denied twice. So when we hear Ford say he's given all this money to build $1.5 million homes, we don't see it in Oxford County. I come from the GTA where we actually see the disparity in funding for infrastructure, healthcare, schools. Yeah.
Ms. Martin, 45 seconds to comment on the rebuttals, please.
Thank you. Homelessness and encampments are incredibly complex, but it can be addressed when all three levels of governments work together and are committed to meeting the needs of our community. We know that we can reduce ambulance calls and police calls that are up 43.5% in the last 3 years. This is our opportunity to elect a government and an MPP that is ready to get to work and fix and solve these problems for our Oxford riding.
All right, going on to the second question, we're going to start with Mr. Beamers from the new Blue Party of Ontario. What are your plans to assist families suffering from food insecurities? Would you consider implementing governance to force stores from disposing of near-expired foods by requiring them to donate to local organizations such as Woodstock In Out of the Cold and Operation Sharing, for example?
Thank you. Forcing them sounds a little overbearing. I would certainly encourage them to do that, not only grocery stores, but restaurants for their food at the end of the night, for the homeless shelters. I think that'd be a great idea. It would give those on the street at least one decent meal a day. And but outside of forcing them, no, but I would highly encourage them to do so. I know in the past, when that has been done, people have gotten sick and then these stores have gotten sued because of that, and that has scared them away. I would like to see something to protect them from such actions happening in the future.
Ms. Harper, 30 seconds to rebut, please.
I think that's a good idea if the grocery stores would do that voluntarily. Again, I don't agree that they should have to do that, but I think they should be able to work together with them and agree with that. I have seen places where people can go in and do an IOU for the homeless, put it on the door. If the homeless need a food, they go in and one of the meals is already paid for. I think different community service like that, it's more of a hand up versus a handout.
Ms. Holyrood, 30 seconds to rebut, please.
Thank you. I totally agree. And one of the ideas that I've seen and I've actually worked with was to see soup kitchens pop up and have central stations across, encouraging local restaurants, local stores to actually supply food at the end of the night and have centralized places where people can go get food. A lot of nonprofits are willing to take up, the burden, but we do need funding for those nonprofits. We need targeted funding to make sure that associations and groups that really are solving this problem get the support they need.
Thank you. Ms. Martin, 30 seconds, please.
There are a lot of businesses and organizations that are already donating food here in Oxford County to a number of organizations that are critical to serving the needs of our most vulnerable. When they are willing and when they are able, they are contributing. I don't think that we can obligate people, but I think that it's important under a public health lens that it's always safe for our recipients, for our homeless community to access food. I'll also say that it's incredibly important that we allow people to access food with dignity.
Mr. Beavers, 45 seconds to rebut all of them, please.
Didn't sound like there was much to rebut. It sounded like it was pretty much agreement on the table up here, so I thank you for that. I would also like to add, when I was working for a missions trip here in town, we were with one of those communities that received near expired food, except it wasn't near expired, it was expired. So I think the better option is near expired, and then they won't have moldy bread.
Okay, moving on to the next question. What will you and your party do to prevent any change in the environmental laws of Ontario which would allow the waste industry to stomp on communities' right to say no to a dump? What is your plan to ensure that no means no, and how can you prove that your party will deliver on promises to rural residents and Toronto and other urban centers do not spoil our countryside?
I went to the market on Saturday and I met a man who has a petition out about this, the Bill 197 about opening the dump. Apparently that has been done a few years ago, and Mr. Ford now is reneging on that and is going to open that up and force people, good farmland probably in Oxford County, to take the garbage of Toronto. So our party is definitely for securing of the environment and whatever we can do. So we would certainly work with the levels of government and prevent that from happening and keep our local farmland secure.
Ms. Holyrood, 30 seconds, please.
Thank you. As we all know, Bill 197, yes, like you said, protects every municipality to have the right to decide who comes to their municipality with garbage. We, as a town in Ingersoll, we fought, you all saw the Bellevue, the Walker project, we fought the dump, we won, and we decide that every municipality has to have that right. Now, when you talk about our farmlands, a lot of them have even contracts with gravel pits. These are futuristic problems that we have in this riding, and if we don't address them by reviewing the rules and making sure every municipality is protected.
Ms. Martin, 30 seconds, please.
Thank you, Brent. I have requested a letter of commitment from the Liberal Party and Bonnie Crombie to verify and to ensure that the municipal powers to say no to landfills remains intact. I don't have a signed letter yet, but I anticipate that it is coming shortly.
Mr. Beamer, 30 seconds, please.
Yes, New Blue has a history of protecting farmland, including the expropriation of farmland against farmers' wishes. We also want to take down those wind turbines that are plaguing our landscapes so that they can be further used, that land can be used for farmland rather than these wasteful wind turbines.
Sorry, I missed that. Thank you.
Sorry.
Ms. Harper, 45 seconds, please.
Yes, so I agree with everybody up here, and our party, the Ontario Party, stands for freedom. So I think our freedom to say no to the dump, to preserve our natural resources, to preserve our farmland, and ultimately our livelihood, safety and security of our food is very important.
Okay, going to the next question for Ms. Holyrood. Provincial governments have no jurisdiction over foreign policy. Yet we've seen politicians at all levels weigh in on geopolitical issues like the Israel-Gaza conflict. Do you believe provincial leaders should take public stance on international matters, or should they remain focused solely on their responsibilities to Ontario?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. The intersectionality of us being a country that is multicultural, global in nature, we have the best of the best in this country. That's why we're considered one of the most educated countries in this world. Because of that, we are a very strong country because our international relations span across the globe, because the people that have tentacles here that help us with international trade, global affairs, are trade commissioners across the world. So when a part of the world is actually destabilized, we're all destabilized. I come from Africa where the apartheid regime did the similar situation that we see in Gaza. So whether as a provincial government you choose to focus on just your healthcare, your education, your roads, and your the people, the mental health that you treat, the people are part of your system. So you cannot separate that, which is why whether we have powers or not, the pressures that we start off from the municipalities to the provincial trickle up to our prime minister. And when letters come through and the provincial government stand for justice, we find that the country stands for justice and on the right side of history.
Ms. Martin, 30 seconds, please.
Thank you, Brent. The phrase ultra vires comes to mind, and that's a phrase that means beyond the power of our scope of jurisdiction. The provincial government has a mandate to meet the needs of Ontario citizens. And as your future MPP, that is my goal, is to focus on Oxford, to focus on Ontario, and to put into policy the benefits and the services and the programs that you need to make life more affordable here in Oxford.
Mr. Beamers, 30 seconds, please.
Yes, as a province, we do have a voice, and what happens as a province impacts the entire country. If we want a better country, we need a better province, we need better communities. So yes, we do have a voice. For elected officials, we should use it in support of our people. And as elected officials, that's what we should be doing, especially if our federal party will not.
Ms. Harper, 30 seconds, please.
I think we should all stay in our lane, right? So the federal government was designed to look after federal issues. The provincial government was designed to look after provincial issues. That's roads, hospitals, police, education. I think if you don't stay in your line, then you dilute so many things and then nothing can get done. And we're not to bully people, and we're to understand and be sensitive to other people's different ethnic groups and all that. But I think we should leave it to the federal government to discuss that.
Ms. Halliroo, 45 seconds to rebut, please.
I understand definitely everyone's point of view, but when you take a look at the international trade that we're about to embark on because of tariffs, the new relationships we'd like to find and, forge partnerships across the world, it does allow us to have a say how well we have basically tread our lanes. So I do believe that even though that's not necessarily the main reason that we're elected, when you become an elected official and you represent a riding, your interest is to represent that riding. I've not just started recently, try to find partnerships with even farmers. I've promoted Oxford County so many places, and you have a lot of people globally reaching out to us. We need officials that are going to go to the provincial legislature and promote policies that help farmers and build partnerships.
Moving on to the next question. In 2023, an anti-scab bill was introduced in Ontario legislature. Bill 90 was met and restored the provisions that were incorporated into Labor Relations Act by the Labor Relations and Employment Statute Law Amended Act in 1992, and subsequently repealed by the Labor Relations Act 1995. The provision would have restored laws to prevent an employer from replacing striking or locked out employees with replacement workers except in specified emergency situations. The bill was defeated. This is integral to balancing the standard employment relations, sir, and assisting in fair bargaining process. Would you vote in favor for passing an anti-scab law?
Thank you, Brent. I would not. I think fair bargaining is essential to our labor process, and I think that unless it becomes down to essential workers that need to meet the needs of life and death situations, I think fair bargaining is the path that we need to take. So I would not support such legislation, such a vote on legislation.
Mr. Beamers, 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, if we were to have scabs come in and take the place of workers, it would seem to overstep the bounds of fair and good faith negotiations. So there's a place for striking if it's a legal strike. There's got to be good faith negotiations, and I'd have to think further whether or not I would vote for or against this. I'm just going to have to admit that.
Ms. Harper, 30 seconds, please.
The Ontario Party believes in a free and just society that guarantees and safeguards the inalienable rights of all citizens. We believe in limited government and the disposable role that autonomous institutions play. For me, I would like to advocate with the unions and with the employers to prevent walkouts, prevent strikes. Surely to goodness, as mature individuals and working citizens, we can work together to prevent stuff like this before it gets to the point that we have to have back to work legislation.
Ms. Halliroo, 30 seconds, please.
Thank you. The Ontario NDP is a party that loves our workers. We support our unions, and they have a right to strike. When strikers happen, we cannot force people to take their places because then the whole essence is defeated. When unions strike, it allows us to strike a balance between employers and employees, and that's their right. So when a business starts to grow and you have enough workers and need to unionize, that is our right, and that is what protects both parties. So I would not vote to have a legislation that blocks, that it allows for scabbing.
Thank you. Ms. Martin, 45 seconds, please.
I've heard comments about limited government, and while I agree to that to a point, I think that defending our workers is our highest priority. And I think that in a community like Oxford, that is a significant part of our economy is automotive, is manufacturing, is agricultural manufacturing. We need to be ready to have an MPP to stand up for our workforce. And so that's my focus, my area of support. So, thank you for the question.
Thank you. Next question. All levels of government, including the province, have a role to play in addressing the housing crisis in Oxford County and taking action to end homelessness in our community. How will you work to end homelessness and housing instability in Oxford County? Mr. Beamers, 1 minute, please.
Yeah, what we have right now with our housing crisis is too much demand, not enough supply. The province is putting shovels in the ground. We commend them for doing so, and they're doing the best they can. Doug Ford bragged about bringing 800,000 new individuals into Ontario. They need homes, they need jobs, they need health care. That's what's driving the housing crisis. We need to limit the amount of immigration that comes into Ontario and take care of Ontario first. And when we're able to reduce the demand, the supply will eventually catch up.
Ms. Harper, 30 seconds, please.
To help with ending the homeless, there's buildings out there. People have a house, let's say, with an empty basement, a garage, or elderly people that are kind of extra rooms in their house. The government has talked about the ADUs to develop an ADU and then put people in there. The biggest thing with that is the red tape. Municipalities and governments are blocking that. In our county, we have been waiting 5 months for even a sign to put on the lawn to say we can have an ADU. We've had lots of people that like to live in a place, but they can't.
Ms. Holyrood, 30 seconds, please.
Thank you. I believe in partnerships. We have women's shelters, we have mental health support homes, we have low-income homes that we can actually collaborate with. The government needs to fund these organizations so that they can collaborate and have multi-density, multi-unit homes that can help us house the homeless. When it comes to the low-income people right now who are actually being held at that level forever because they can't save, they can't leave those homes, we need to invest in education to get people back to school working so that they can transition out of homeless, low-income housing and get people in as well.
Ms. Martin, 30 seconds, please.
4 points. I want to eliminate the land transfer tax for first-time home buyers to make it more affordable. That'll be about $13,500 on average. Make renting more affordable by introducing fair, phased-in rent control. Resolve landlord-tenant disputes faster. And double the current stock of supportive housing, which is about 650 units in the last couple of years, would be about 50 more units per year in Oxford County. And that is my commitment as your future Member of Parliament to deliver on affordable housing.
Mr. Beamers, 45 seconds, please.
Yeah, what I heard from the others on the table, I like some of what I've heard about helping, what was that third point you said? Landlord-tenant disputes, they need to be taken care of quicker. We'd like to see that done within 30 days. We have too many tenants not paying their rent. We got people who want to pay rent, let them pay the rent. And as well as just, we got to bring the supply up while the demand is still there. We need to make a higher supply.
Given the current political climate and the significant threat posed, it is imperative that Ontario government respond proactively. How should the Ontario government respond to Trump's tariffs? 1 minute, Ms. Harper.
How should we respond? Mr. Trump, when he talked about tariffs, he said, secure the border and fix the fentanyl drug issues. Fentanyl is going across. They just caught a whole pound of fentanyl from BC into the States. But our federal government and Mr. Ford are not doing that. They're talking about people losing their jobs and what we're going to do with economic collapse. I say we secure the border and we help fix the drug program. There won't be any tariffs. There won't be any job losses.
Ms. Holyrood, 30 seconds.
Thank you. We need to take tariffs very seriously because they end up in our pockets. We have to pay those extra costs. Trump is someone we cannot trust. Fentanyl, we've dealt with it. We're only less than 1% doing fentanyl to the United States. We need a premier. We need someone who can stand and fight for Ontario workers, because whether we like it or not, we saw this in 2018 when we lost jobs. The steel workers, the auto industry, our farmers. We need to build new partnerships, find new markets. Africa does billions of dollars with Canada. Europe does billions of dollars with Canada. We need to find new markets for our farmers and our industry.
Ms. Martin, 30 seconds, please.
The Ontario Liberals have released an 8-point plan on fighting Trump's tariffs. We're going to stand behind every worker, every farmer, every family in this province until this crisis is over. But you and I have just as much a responsibility to be a part of fighting tariffs and the impact that it will have in Ontario. Shopping locally, shopping Ontario, shopping Canadian will become incredibly important during these next few years when tariffs take effect. It is important for us to focus on food processing and supporting.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brent.
Mr. Babers, 30 seconds, please.
Yep, U.S. tariffs that Trump putting in place is making things more expensive for the Americans, not for the Canadians. It does shrink our Canadian audience a little bit of who we want to sell to, because what Trump wants to do is encourage the American companies to shop American, not Canadian. The last time he incorporated the steel and aluminum tariffs, it lasted about a year because the majority of their steel and aluminum come from Canada. So it does make things expensive for them, not for us. What we cannot do is get into a tariff war with the states. What we cannot do is have retaliatory tariffs, because he will just turn around and put more in place.
Ms. Harper, 45 seconds, please.
I really don't believe the less than 1% of fentanyl grown across the border. I'm a nurse and I've worked in the hospital, and we've seen daily the effects of drugs and on hospitalization and all that of those poor people that are drug addicts. Like I said, out in BC, there was a whole pound of fentanyl had just gone from BC into the States. That's enough to wipe off Nova Scotia, the people, all that whole. So we really need to fix the fentanyl. We need to secure the border. We need to hire police and security at the border to prevent that. Maybe get scanners to scan those big totes on the ships that go across and that have all their drugs and their who knows what's all in those containers.
Next question. We are in the middle of an industrial transition and economic slowdown not seen in generations. Action centers and other government-led or funded initiatives would provide vital financial and transitional provisions for people on layoff in peer-led backing when they need it most. How will you improve labor adjustment programs to better support workers through job loss and plant closures?
Thank you. Very good question. We have a moving economy. It's the era of AI. We have adults that are retiring and also still need something to do and still need some maybe income. We have to understand that as a province, when people are at risk of losing their jobs, we need to figure out how to get them back to work, whether it's in their industry or elsewhere. Education cuts have hurt that a lot. We have the second skilled worker program. We have, retraining programs that we can offer workers when they lose their jobs. We have even our young people who are going into skilled trades directly. We need to think about where we need to position them so they can be successful. So we have to just simply prioritize education, prioritize healthcare. We look at the AI industry right now, a lot of jobs that adults and a lot of mature adults could do. We need to reinvest in people. Care back for people. The NDP cares about people, and they're on your side when it comes to all those family basic kitchen table issues. We need to strategically vote the Ford government out. Yeah.
Ms. Martin, 30 seconds, please.
I actually had experience with this in the 2008-2009 economic crisis when a lot of businesses were losing jobs and human beings were losing their job. I think it's incredibly important. The lesson I learned then is when you have an MPP that is willing to step up for your community and fight for the resources at that time of need, that's when your community can rebound. And that takes economic investment. It takes supports for transitioning workers into new jobs. And my personal experience is that it can work when you have a strong MPP.
Mr. Beamers, 30 seconds, please.
We need to let the government get out of the way of the businesses doing business. There's too much red tape. We need to make, as a government, we need to make it attractive for businesses to come to Ontario to provide jobs. Skilled trades are important. We need to encourage our young people to go into skilled trades such as electricians, plumbers, truck drivers, on the rest.
Ms. Harper, 30 seconds, please.
The way of going is to reduce the waste. For instance, this election, snap election that Mr. Ford has called, is going to cost us taxpayers $190 million. In his speech, he promised $32 billion in new funding and new spending on skills and all kinds of things. I go back to, we need to support our workers. Absolutely, they need jobs. By doing that, we secure the border and we cut down on the fentanyl so that tariffs do not come to... Sorry?
45 seconds, please, Ms. Holyrood.
First of all, we need to understand that motivating workers is a very serious priority. When we had the COVID pandemic and we had healthcare workers just tired, stretched to their limits, they rallied for support and we didn't give it to them. They were exhausted. We saw nurses reach out to the states and get better jobs that paid them more. We saw doctors leave the province. So we need to listen to our healthcare workers, and we need to listen to any union when they cry out for help. When you motivate the existing workers, they're willing to stay in their careers longer, no matter how bad it is. But when it's really bad and we don't listen, then we lose them. So we need to invest again in areas that we've cut funding, prioritize the well-being of people.
To the next question. According to polling conducted by Environics Research, nearly 8 or 10 Ontarios, 78% believe that the government should use public money to increase funding to public hospitals and clinics so they can rebuild capacity instead of redirecting funding to private for-profit clinics. Will you stop for-profit privatization of our healthcare? Ms. Martin, 1 minute, please.
Absolutely, unequivocally. Stopping privatization of healthcare is incredibly important to our public healthcare system. 7,886 people in Ontario, in Oxford, don't have access to a healthcare practitioner right now, and that's something that we need to fix. When we privatize healthcare, it robs the Ministry of Health budget in overinflated pricing for profit, and we need to focus on public health care for each and every member of Ontario and for each and every resident in Oxford.
Mr. Beamers, 30 seconds, please.
Well, the first thing we need to do is hire back those healthcare workers, those nurses who were fired for taking a personal choice. When Ford was crying that our healthcare workers are overwhelmed, he went and fired them all. Or a lot of them. So we first order of business, hire them back. We need to cut down wait times. That might be done partially through alternative health cares, but we need to attract more doctors and nurses into Ontario. But job one is to hire back the nurses.
Ms. Harper, 30 seconds, please.
I think instead of stopping, I think we kind of work together. I think you can have public healthcare and you can have private healthcare work together to the benefit of everyone. The Ontario Party will expand medical schools to have guaranteed placement for doctors and have our own kids get placements in medical positions first. Reform the CPS and medical licensing boards to ensure they practice medicine can choose to question intelligent to both care possible. So I think if we can revamp the...
Thank you very much, Ms. Harper. Ms. Holyrood, 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, I would absolutely refuse to have us continue on the path of private healthcare. Public healthcare is Canadian pride. It is the healthcare that we must have a standard for. We need to have standardized ways to attract our doctors, to incentivize healthcare workers to come to this province and stay in this province. We cannot afford to have two systems working side by side. You're taking money away from where people need it the most. We definitely need to fill capacity back at the hospitals. We need to hire more doctors. We have on the NDP platform a plan to hire more doctors.
Ms. Martin, 45 seconds, please.
We need to restore trust in our healthcare system. We could have a fancy spa at Ontario Place, or everyone in Ontario could have a family doctor. So I'm committed to saying no to private healthcare, delivering team-based care in Oxford County, and integrated care for seniors in our community. So thank you very much for the question.
Investing in Made in Ontario or Made in Canada transportation vehicles, prioritizing supporting our local industries, and strengthening our economy and creating sustainable jobs should be a priority for all levels of government. Do you commit to supporting public transit with Made in Ontario vehicles? Mr. Beamers, 1 minute, please.
Absolutely. Made in Ontario, made in Canada, that's the way we should go. The more we can make in Ontario, the more jobs we have. The more we can make in Ontario, the less we have to spend bringing in to Ontario, which would cost us money. The more we can build in Ontario, the more we can export else out of Ontario. So yes, I would support public transportation being Canadian made, absolutely.
Ms. Harper, 30 seconds, please.
Absolutely. The Ontario Party supports workers. It's great. We all need to be back working. We all need to be paying taxes to support all the services that require. I totally agree with public transit. Get those GO trains going. That moves a lot of people. It's a lot cheaper, and it's actually fun going on those big trains.
Ms. Holyrood, 30 seconds, please.
Thank you. It's why the ATU just endorsed Merit Stiles, because they feel like she's definitely going to be supporting transit in Ontario. The public transit system and the equipments we need. I feel like NAFTA did us dirty by agreeing for us to expand their auto industry into Canada, and now we're paying for it. We need to go back to research and development and start anew, trying to find ways that we can fund Ontario and Canadian-made cars and transit systems. And I think with a new approach and a new eye on the ball, we may need to go back to those details.
Ms. Martin, 30 seconds, please.
My experience as a municipal councillor is that there's actually only one company in Canada that produces transit buses. So I would not only support a policy that we invest in a low-cost option, but that it would be required to be locally made either in Ontario or in Canada. Not only for public transit, but I actually had a dream recently that we were all driving vehicles in Oxford County that were made right here in Oxford County. Perhaps a dream, but a goal for us all.
Thank you. Mr. Beamers, 45 seconds to rebut, please.
Yes, we need to, I think we've all in agreement here, made in Ontario is better. The more plants we have in Ontario, the more workers we have and a lower unemployment rate. What we don't need is a government telling we can only have one type of vehicle being made in Ontario. We need to eliminate that declaration. Everybody has to be driving EVs. If they want to drive an EV, knock yourself out. But if you want to drive a Ford, a Chevy, a Toyota that's built right here in Woodstock, even better.
All right, this is the last question that I have for tonight before we open it up to the floor. But on March 7th, 2024, the Ontario NDP tabled the Intimate Partner Violence Epidemic Act, Bill 173, that calls on government to respond appropriately to the growing numbers of people affected by intimate partner violence in the province of Ontario. It was moved to second reading and then sent to the committee for further analysis, then never brought back for a final vote. Other provinces have passed this legislation. Will you declare intimate partner violence an epidemic and assist in bringing this bill to fruition? Ms. Harper, you have 1 minute.
Yes, I would certainly support that. Partners, certainly either one, males or females, do not deserve to be violence against them and everything that entails. So I would support that.
Ms. Holyrood, 30 seconds, please.
Thank you. It is definitely very disappointing statistics that we see how high our intimate partner violence has come, especially in Oxford County. Last I heard, almost 80% we have increase in shelters, receiving both parties, both sexes. So we really need to support this, not just because it's already been brought to the table, but it needs to be considered a mental health crisis. And I think most of the reasons we see this happen more and more is because A, we do not have enough healthcare workers to actually have mental health care support for our families.
Ms. Martin, 30 seconds, please.
Bill 173 is one of several bills that this government has allowed to fail because of calling an early snap election. Intimate partner violence is an epidemic, not just in Ontario, but right here in Oxford. I have personally voted at Woodstock and Oxford County to declare this an epidemic in our community, and I am committed, as your Liberal MPP, to advocating at the provincial level for funding, for sexual assault centers, for responses, for human trafficking resources.
Mr. Beamers, 30 seconds, please.
Yes, I would support this. I'm kind of surprised we're not keeping pace with the rest of the country, with the other provinces. Again, as you said, by product of an early snap election. We need to have longer sentences for the abuser, and we need more support for the victim instead of rehabilitation for the so-called victim and find excuses of why they are so abusive. We need to support the victim rather than the abuser.
Ms. Harper, 45 seconds to rebut.
The Ontario Party will believe in a free and just society that guarantees and safeguards the inalienable rights of all citizens. So a basic right of humans is not to be abused, is to be understood, accepted, and certainly not suffer violence of any kind. So we certainly need to carry on with that program.
Thank you very much. All right, well, that was with a list of questions that I had. I would like to open up the floor. If anyone in the audience would like to ask a question, the mic is back there beside Scott Bradford, the sound guy and the financial secretary. But if you would like to ask a question, you need to keep it under 15 seconds long when you're asking it. So if not, and if I see none, I will move to the candidates having their 2-minute closing remarks. You have any questions? Feel free.
Excuse me, I would actually like to hear from all of the candidates. This question is kind of piggybacks on the last one. How are you and your party going to eliminate the violence that our young children are seeing in the classroom? And that's my question.
Okay, thank you. So each candidate can have 45 seconds to answer the question, okay? We'll start with you, Ms. Martin.
Thank you. Ford has deliberately underfunded our public school system and our post-secondary school system. $61 per student has been cut in Oxford in our school system. So I'm ready to reinvest in public education, to fix staff shortages, to provide personalized learning, especially for kids who need extra help, and to provide a safe and healthy environment. And if we can restore $1,561 per student, we will just get back on track. We need additional investment so that teachers and their assistants can have control within the classroom and give students an opportunity to learn.
Yes, well, thank you for the question. My son wanted to become a school teacher, but he said the process was too long. And I would agree we need to maybe shorten the process, streamline it, because we need more teachers. We need smaller classroom sizes so that kids don't fall through the cracks, that classroom size ain't too big, so that would lead to the possibility of somebody getting bullied, somebody falling through the cracks. So we need more teachers and qualified teachers.
Ms. Harper?
The Ontario Party, we believe in honoring parents and the primary education of their children and respecting the values they choose to raise their children. I think as the Ontario Party, we need to support and defend families. If families have a good secureness, mums, dads, aunts, uncles, that they can go to if they need help, that they are supported by, they get together for meals, and if they come home from school, there's somebody at the home to greet them. So I think we need to support and defend back to families.
Ms. Halliroo?
Thank you. When it comes to violence and bullying in schools, we have to be serious about this matter. When schools were funded, teachers had more access to discussions, activities, programs that actually just gave kids an all-rounded well education. Now with shortage of staff, no ECs to support, it's just a classroom. It's just talking to kids all day, and kids are not about talking. And when you have a kid who is under, different issues, like we have a lack of diversity in doctors that can even tell what's wrong with our kids. We have kids that are not diagnosed with proper medical conditions because they are in a waiting list. Teachers are meant to teach, but you find teachers dealing with very complex medical situations with kids in the classrooms, and they're they're attacked by kids who don't have the support even from home.
You hang on to the mic just for a minute. Do we have another question?
Good evening.
Or is this directed to all or just one?
To all.
Thank you. Just
I hear a lot about adding funding to different, whether it's education or healthcare, whatever. I would like to know what you're going to do to make those different departments or areas of the government more cost effective, because we still have to pay for it as taxpayers. So how do you find the balance between adding funding that's needed but making things more effective?
Thank you. Ms. Halliroo, can you please start the 45 seconds?
Thank you. What we need to understand is when you take a look at the budget at any government level, it's about prioritization. The same budget could be applied to 3 different governments and they would spend it differently. For example, you all just got a $200 check. That was about $3 billion. Merit Styles have committed to hiring 3,500 doctors with a budget of $4 billion. So let that sink in for a minute. If you had the opportunity to move things around and truly place priorities on the basic kitchen table it matters, like education and healthcare, senior care, and homelessness, infrastructure spending, if you prioritize that, you would take money from the $1.4 billion and the $8.6 billion for the SPAR and all the money that you've collected from shady deals and actually put it where it matters. He's cut funding to these areas, and that's why we're suffering.
Ms. Harper, 45 seconds to answer the same question, please.
So the Ontario Party would cut the waste. Again, about this election, $190 million on an unnecessary election. Cut taxes, cut the provincial sales tax by 3%. That puts money in your pocket, and then you spread that money out around. You're able to pay your bills, and then your businesses prosper from that. And if they prosper, then the rest of Oxford will prosper.
Thank you. Mr. Beamers, 45 seconds, please.
Yeah, I think it was mentioned already, but part of the way we could get rid of the waste, is just get rid of the waste. The wasteful spending, the administrative cost is too high, the red tape is too much. We need more jobs, because with more jobs, you got more income tax. When the government has more income tax, they can allot it to these programs that need it.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Martin, 45 seconds, please.
I think it's important to note, and thanks for the question, Carol, it's important to know that I'm not specifically talking about all new funding and new budget lines within the provincial budget. I'm talking about reprioritizing the way that we spend. We have seen a lot of incredibly wasteful spends in the past 7 years. And I'll give you a small example that is one of many. Rural transit in Ontario is a program that is being discontinued. The funding is being discontinued next month. It's a $5 million envelope. This provincial government spent more changing the font on the MTO signs along the 401 than what it would cost to restore rural transit in 9 counties in southwestern Ontario. So it's about prioritizing where we spend our dollars to meet the needs.
All right, please, when you get to the mic, point if it's for all or one individual.
Well, I'd like to hear everyone's opinion on this. The landlord-tenant tribunals, I believe they're an unmitigated disaster, and I would like to know what you would do if elected to get things back on track and make it work in Ontario.
Ms. Martin, we'll start with you, please.
I think we need to resolve disputes faster. I think that we need to phase in rent control. And those are 2 of my highest priorities in ensuring that a fair system for landlords, but also for tenants. That's my 2-point plan.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Mr. Beamers, 45 seconds, please.
Yes, landlord-tenant disputes need to be taken care of quickly. New Blue wants to see them done in 30 days or less. We can't have things lingering on because it just adds to administrative costs. It costs landlords money, and it's costing them, and it's costing the tenants time. If you need a new tenant, you got to get the old one out if they're not paying or if they're destructive. So within 30 days is our plan.
Thank you. Ms. Harper, 45 seconds, please.
So I am a landlord, and we have a fourplex. And I think if you can work together with your tenants, right? So you have an apartment for rent, you get it, you vet that tenant as best as your ability, get references, and but life happens, things change. But we need an open communication with our tenants and talk to them, be able to work with them. Say hard times happen, they need a few minutes or a few weeks later or whatever, but they still have to be able to come up with their commitment to their contract. But I think we should work together before it gets to a landlord and tenant.
Thank you very much. Ms. Holyrood, 45 seconds, please.
Thank you. It is ridiculous the amount of time people have to wait when there's a dispute. We need to establish more policy that protects landlords and also protects tenants. The rent control has to come back, and the NDP is committed to reviewing the rent control program. We also need to have more people volunteer to be on those tribunals because the wait time is too long. So when you want to invest in a housing crisis, you invest from beginning to end on what makes that whole continuum work. So whether it's having rent control, building homes, having a program that moves people from home out of housing and into housing, we need to take a look at the whole spectrum. And that's why NDP is on your side to do that. We want to get back to the kitchen table matters that are actually affecting you right now. So rent control for sure is a priority.
Okay, I see there's 5 more questions up there. We're going to stop after those 5 questions, please, and now we're going to go into the closing arguments. Can you please tell me if it's for all or one individual candidate?
This is for all the candidates.
Thank you very much, sir. Please ask your question.
So there is a program that we see in our local Oxford libraries from time to time called Drag Story Time. Do you support drag story times or do you oppose them?
Sorry, you, Ms. Holyrood, please. And going back forward, please.
All right. So Canada is a civil society and everybody has a place. No one is better than the other. Everyone has a right to what works for them. And I've said this before, even when we had an issue at Ingersoll, that there is no right of anyone encroaching on anyone's rights. If you are not interested in drag time, then don't go. It doesn't mean that the ones that want to go should not have the right to go. So I think as a civil society, we need to remember that we come from different places and spaces, but we have to always remember we have equal liberties in this country.
Thank you very much. Ms. Harper, 45 seconds, please.
I would not support drag queen time. My question to that is, you've got people dressing up in drag and they're reading stories to children, to minors, very sexual, explicit things to minors. How come the drag queens don't go to the seniors? The seniors are lonely. They would love to have stories read to them. They would love to have someone to sit and chat with them. I would suggest maybe that as versus minors.
Thank you very much. Mr. Beamers, 45 seconds, please.
That's an easy no for me. I don't think drag story time or drag queens, transgenderism, that whole thing has any place with children. Children are children. They're not. We have to ask the question, why do these drag queens insist on having the audience of children? I wouldn't want my children to be there, and I wouldn't want your children to be there. That is up to you, of course. But I would not be in support of that myself, no.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Martin, 45 seconds, please.
Thank you. Without question, I'm a Rainbow ally and I fully support drag story time. In fact, I have attended here in Woodstock and Ingersoll. I'd also support Indigenous story time, and I'd support, I'm a welder story time, and I'd support whatever other story time is necessary because literacy matters. I am an ally, and when you are in my presence, you will always have a safe space.
Thank you very much. Going back to the mic for one or all, please, sir.
For all 6.
Thank you.
I'm thinking about my future. My question's related to long-term care. And my question is how will you evaluate what is appropriate long-term care, and what will you do to prevent negligent long-term carers from receiving additional provincial funds?
Thank you for the question. Start with you, please, Ms. Martin. 45 seconds.
Yeah, long-term care is housing in our community at this point. And even though long-term care is actually considered quite short-term care in our community, I think it is important to prevent nutritional deficiencies, behavioral deficiencies, and the poor treatment of residents. I think that long-term care facilities are licensed in our province. They are monitored, and that monitoring needs to be quite strict and reinforced. And so I am fully supportive of that. Where we fall short is the funding of long-term care facilities. This provincial government has underfunded long-term care facilities in Oxford to an egregious degree. And I think we need to get back to funding in order to provide adequate supports.
Mr. Beamers, 45 seconds, please.
Yes, we need to fund the good long-term retirement homes, the long-term housing, and defund the ones that aren't so good. And that begins with you, the families. If your family members are in these long-term care facilities and they're doing a poor job, report them to the authorities that need to be reported to. We had an example of that here in Woodstock not that long ago, that it was reported. We need to keep our people safe and fund those that do a good job and get rid of those that do not do a good job.
Thank you. Ms. Harper, 45 seconds, please.
Long-term care, they have their own licensing and their own policy and procedures, their own system. So I think we should go to those people and address any issues of irregularities in long-term care. It should go to the owners and the people that are responsible and make them accountable to the residents that are in their facility.
Thank you. Ms. Halliroo, 45 seconds, please.
Yeah, thank you for that question. If I understand, the question was long-term care and housing and how you would define how to improve it. We hear funding. Funding means restoring the cuts, okay? First of all, restoring the cuts that have left our long-term care facilities. And then I would also propose that it's not just about asking for funding, it's about bringing new ideas on how to solve existing problems. I would also think about stay-home care. I would love for some seniors to have the option, if they wanted to stay in their homes, to be cared for in their homes. We would need to establish other options on how we can have healthcare workers be more outreach workers. So it's back to the healthcare question, restoring the cuts, offering a lot of solutions and options by providing more nurses, more help.
Thank you very much, Ms. Halliroo. Going to the next question, is it for one or all?
It's for all.
Thank you. We'll start with Ms. Halliroo after the question.
Wonderful, thank you. So hate crimes have been at an all-time high towards new immigrants and to us LGBTQ plus individuals. How do you hope to address this issue in our community?
Ms. Halliroo, 45 seconds, please.
Thank you, that's a very good question. For every time we've actually experienced an issue, I think awareness. A lot of times people act on ignorance. There's a lot of people who have never even moved out of maybe Oxford County, traveled. People are very grounded, and sometimes they just don't know. So I think creating awareness for whatever it is, from bullying. I've gone into schools to speak to kids for bullying. I've gone into schools to talk about racism and discrimination, Indigenous rights. So we need to, as allies of each other, just create more awareness. And I think when organizations and governments actually proactively communicate, one of my prides in Ingersoll is to actually ask us to communicate more with the constituents so that they know what we're doing. And I think that's one of the tools that we all have. So communication is key.
Ms. Harper, 45 seconds, please.
The Ontario Party certainly does not condone any hate crimes. Again, I go back to honoring and supporting parents. If you can have families that are supporting of their children, if they could teach their children to honor, respect, and not to discriminate or anything against any a Canadian or any of the children. They see the little kids at school and, the kids come home and say, we need strong families, aunts, uncles, brothers and sisters to support the kids, to explain to them that it is not polite nor respectful to be hateful of anyone.
Thank you very much. Mr. Beamers, 45 seconds, please.
Yes, any hate crime or any crime really is any crime against a certain ethnicity or immigrant lifestyle is undeserved. Everybody deserves dignity, even if you don't agree with their lifestyle. Hate and or respect is learned at home, so we need stronger families, that has been said before, but everybody deserves dignity, so why don't we have longer sentences for some of these people? Why do we have catch and release? Maybe longer penalties for those who do the crime. Can't do the time, don't do the crime.
Thank you very much. Ms. Martin, 45 seconds, please.
Thank you, Brent. Thanks for the question, Joanna. I think we need to create safe spaces for new Canadians, for our 2S LGBTQIA plus community. I think that we need to have allies who are going to stand up and defend victims of hate. And I think Oxford needs an MPP who's going to show up to 2S LGBTQIA events and be a champion for that community. And I am delighted to be that person. An ally, a friend, and ready to step up and be your MPP. Thank you.
Thank you. One or all, sir? Thank you very much.
Two-part question. Many Ontarians are currently working 2, 3, or even more jobs just to make ends meet, yet they often get pushed into higher tax brackets and overtaxed due to the way our system calculates income. Would you support tax relief for multi-job workers, such as adjusting tax brackets or offering deductions to reduce the financial burden on those working multiple jobs? Additionally, would you advocate for eliminating income tax on overtime to ensure workers are fairly compensated for their extra hours? And if so, what specific measures would you implement?
Did all of you get the question? That's fine. I just want to make sure that the member wants to go to the mic and ask the question. You need to understand the question. Does everybody get it? Okay, we'll start with you, Ms. Martin.
Thanks, Wes. I think it's the reality that more and more people are working 2 jobs. And I'm one of those people that's probably working 3 or 4 jobs. I fully support the tax break that you're speaking of for that dual income per individual tax bracket. I think that the second part of the question, fairly compensated.
So the second part of the question is about overtime, and if I can just give maybe a quick reference point, Mr. Moderator. So last year I spent the better part of a year to year and a half working at CAMI on the battery assembly project, and I saw countless hours going in by the trades as well as the folks from CAMI production and otherwise, sometimes working 6 or 7 days a week, 10-hour days plus, and those folks working all of that time away from their families, plus the overtime, they're giving away 40+% back in taxes. So that's the second part of the question is what would you do in terms of overtime for those workers and any type of tax reform on that?
This is why I asked for short questions in 15 seconds, because now she's got 5 seconds to answer that. I'm going to extend it to a minute to answer that question for all of them. Please try to answer the second.
Yeah, so the second part of the question, and the perspective really helps answer that. I can't commit the Liberal Party to funding that they haven't put within their 40-page platform, but I will commit to advocating on this issue because I actually think it's going to be incredibly relevant right here in Oxford County, given the amount of manufacturing that takes place here.
Thank you. Mr. Beamers, 60 seconds, please.
Yes, I like your idea. I'll start with the second part first. I like the idea of not taxing overtime because it encourages work and it encourages being productive for society and most importantly for your family. And if you do all that overtime and then you get your paycheck and you see it's all gone to taxes, that's discouraging and doesn't encourage you to work. And it leaves the boss maybe even behind a project. As a truck driver, unfortunately, I don't get overtime. I just work 70 hours a week and then I'm told I got to quit. But I'm in favor of that. What we also want to do to help you have your money, more of your money in your wallet at the end of the day is to eliminate that carbon tax because it makes everything expensive, from putting gas in your car to groceries to buying soap. As well as reducing the HST from 13 to 10%, I believe all of that coupled together would make it easier on families to buy boots for the kids, school supplies, maybe repairs for the car.
Thank you, Mr. Beamers. Ms. Harper, 60 seconds, please.
Working 2 jobs, 3 jobs to support their family, that speaks to our economic demise. But kudos to families and people who are working to do that to support their families. But it's a shame that that's what has to be. The Ontario Party is for tax reform, reducing the provincial sales tax to 3%. You seniors, they're looking at reducing property taxes by 65%. You've already paid lots of your taxes. So we work, make, pay, and then everything that we spend on that goes to taxes. So yes, we are certainly, and taxes on overtime, I think that is a great way to be, to help keep more money in your pocket.
Thank you very much. Ms. Holyrood, 60 seconds, please.
Thank you. Sometimes it helps to be someone who sees the blind spots. As an immigrant, I've come in here and I've seen things that have been stable happening over and over. One of the things that I personally thought I would suggest, I would put forward if I became your MPP, was to actually reduce the minimum wage before it was taxed. You know the tax form you fill when you get a job and it's $11,300? It has to rise. I would personally put a bill through to see that number rise to about $19,999 before anyone is taxed. That would allow us to take a lot of people out of poverty and allow us to at least give people back the money they deserve to have. And I think with that, someone will not necessarily need to have the 2-3 jobs. You could have one job and maybe have an extra job. And kids could actually earn enough to take care of themselves as well and alleviate that burden of families. We need to take a holistic approach again to looking at poverty, to looking at income distribution, and to looking at the standard of living in Ontario.
Thank you very much. Can you please state if it's for all or one?
So this is for all candidates.
Thank you.
I am the Vice President of Oxford County Pride, and I am here tonight to get your commitment to support the 2S LGBTQIA community in Oxford County, to come to Oxford County Pride's events as a participant and a supporter of our community, and I'd like to hear your commitment to defend our rights loudly and proudly, given what we are seeing from south of the border with the Trump administration and the attacks on our community within Canada from provinces like New Brunswick, Saskatchewan, Alberta, and others. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with you, Ms. Holyrood.
Thank you. Like I said earlier, Canadian rights and liberties are for everyone. I do not advocate for any group that is more marginalized because I'm also from a marginalized community. I will not make a commitment to attend an event because it doesn't mean that I don't support that group. I do not expect everyone to be at a Black History flag raising. I do not expect anyone to be at my mosque during Friday prayers. I do not expect to be at your church at Christmas. I believe that we all have groups, we all have beliefs, we have a liberty in this country to have freedom of speech, religion, association, orientation, whatever. I believe those rights. But I want to make it very clear that just because some of us don't show up in some places doesn't mean that we disregard those people. So like I said, it's a Canadian society, we all have equal rights, and we're all free to associate.
Ms. Harper, 45 seconds, please.
I support all people, and so does the Ontario Party. They talk about the inalienable rights to liberty and freedom of speech, freedom of to gather. And I certainly do not support harassment or bullying of anyone. So that a whole law that came out, that encompasses everybody. That encompasses you, it accompanies children, adults, whatever. So that is a blanket statement for everybody, not just for the LGBT community. And due to my religious belief, I will not support. If you want to do the Pride thing, absolutely, but I will not be attending it. But I support you to do that yourself, for sure.
Thank you. Mr. Beamers, 45 seconds, please.
The invitation was for me to come to a Pride event. I'm going to decline for my own personal beliefs. Live as you please. I don't like it shoved in my face, and I'm sure you wouldn't want my beliefs shoved or forced down down your throat either. But live as you like. Don't force others to live as you want them to live. And whether or not I agree with your lifestyle or not, your self-worth shouldn't be hanging on that question.
Thank you. Ms. Martin, 45 seconds, please.
I'd be delighted to attend. I have attended in the past. I'd be delighted to attend in the future. I think it's important to defend human rights right here in our own community of Oxford, not just for Pride events. I'd be happy to attend Black History, Intimate Partner Violence events, Sikh Month. There's so many events of marginalized people in our community that we need a champion who's going to stand up, support, be an ally, and defend. And so I'm there.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to move into the 2 minutes each candidate has for closing remarks. We're going to start with the Liberal Party candidate, Bernier Martin. Bernier, please go for 2 minutes.
Thank you. And again, thank you to Unifor 636 and to Rogers TV for broadcasting tonight. The job of MPP is not one that allows you to enter into it with training wheels on. This is a significant responsibility. It's an enormous job. Healthcare, affordability, education, agriculture, autism, Ontario disability support payments, a future for our youth, tax cuts. There's an incredibly long list of important issues that all need to be addressed. I have a plan. I believe that I'm the person that can deliver solutions for Oxford. Are you ready to help 7,886 people find a healthcare practitioner? Are you ready to help support agriculture? Are you ready to reprioritize spending in education? I'm going to need your vote to make it happen. I believe that I am ready. I am ready to use my experience, my energy, my enthusiasm, and my relationship building skills to get to work at Queen's Park to ensure that Oxford gets the programs, the services, and the funding that we deserve to make our community healthy and whole again. I'm ready.
Thank you very much. Mr. Beamers, 2 minutes closing remarks, please.
Thank you again to Unifor for the invitation and this opportunity to be here in front of you tonight. Thank you for being here on a cold night. At least it's warm in here. Although you said it's cold up here. I'm fine. But I got a jacket on, so. Anyways, Oxford is a conservative riding, and it deserves to have a new blue conservative representing you in Queen's Park. To highlight some of our new blues policy declarations, you've heard a couple of them already. Eliminate the carbon tax, reduce the HST to 10%, remove CRT and gender identity theory from schools to teach the history, failures, and evils of communism, rehire all the nurses and healthcare workers fired for personal vaccination choice, end all the COVID-19 regulation nonsense, defund of elective abortions, stop the expansion of MAID, and keep the WHO, the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, and the UN out of Ontario. Ontario is for Ontarians. And don't be fooled. Doug Ford and the PC party are not conservative. How can they be when they were endorsed by the Liberal finance minister of the federal party during Doug Ford's own Super Bowl ad? The New Blue Party is not just another conservative party. We are your conservative party for Queen's Park. I could say much more, but I believe I'm getting close to end of time. You can email us at oxfordnewblue@gmail.com, and I will be staying around afterwards to talk with you one-on-one if you wish. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Harper, 2 minutes, please. Closing remarks.
This was a wonderful evening. Good chance to get to know the candidates and you, the voters of Oxford. Mr. Ford is asking for a trust at a time when trust of elected officials is at an all-time low. Mr. Ford is also unnecessarily asking for a new mandate 17 months early. He calls a $190 million snap election in the middle of the winter when he knows very well that campaigning is challenging. Clearly, he's trying to get ahead of the Greenbelt scandal and likely a change of government at the federal level. For too long, we have watched Ottawa strip Ontario of its sovereignty, weaken our economy, decimate our healthcare, and open gates to unchecked immigration. The Ontario Party will work to ensure that no federal policy or outside interference will determine what is best for the people of Ontario by enacting the Sovereignty Act similar to that what was done in Alberta. We have all heard the promises before. The Doug Ford progressive conservatives are liberals in disguise. Doug Ford has stood by when federal taxes crippled Ontario families, and when leadership was needed most, he failed to act. The Ontario Party will reduce the sales tax by 3%, reduce property taxes for seniors by 65%, ensure our taxes work for us and not for Ottawa. For too long, Ontarians have been dependent on foreign market leaders looking beyond our borders for solutions while ignoring the wealth of talent, innovation, and industry that rides here in Ontario. This fight is not about me, it's about you. Politicians like Doug Ford want you to believe that you're powerless and the landscape is hopeless. Do not believe him. You hold the power to change the future of this province. This election is a turning point. Let's demand better. Let's choose a leader in Ontario that puts people first. With courage, conviction, commitment, we can make Ontario the prosperous province that benefits future generations once and for all. That is why I'm asking for your vote February 27th. God bless you, God bless Oxford, and God bless Ontario.
Thank you very much. Ms. Holyrood, 2 minutes closing remarks, please.
Thank you. I want to thank you for the invitation today, Unifor 636, and I want to thank you all for attending tonight. I'm very passionate about what I do whenever I do it, and I want to say I've also, along with you, seen what this government has done. It has taken us 10 years backwards. We were already 10 years backwards. 20 years ago, we knew that we were going to have 20 years shortage because we had baby boomers retiring. I have an uncle who's 82, who's the only oncologist of Thunder Bay. And I'm telling you, they're desperate to retire, but they can't retire. So I have my personal passion and platform to make me stand up for you, to go represent you at Queen's Park. If you want a government that will trust you and will be on the people's side again, the NDP is ready. And I'll just read for you my personal priorities. As the NDP candidate for Oxford County, I'm committed to affordable housing. I will fight to increase the supply of affordable homes, strengthen tenant protection so everyone has a safe space to live. Healthcare access. I will work to expand healthcare services, ensure better funding for hospitals, support healthcare workers, and improve mental health care for all. And I would fight for good paying jobs. I will support small businesses, invest in sustainable industries, and create more good paying jobs to strengthen our local economy. And I will fight with climate change by pushing clean energy investments, sustainable agriculture, and strong environmental protections to secure a healthier future. I'm also about equity and inclusion. I will advocate for underrepresented communities, ensuring that Black, Indigenous, and marginalized voices are heard and empowered in decision-making locally. And youth and education are our biggest priority. I will fight for affordable education, better skills training, and more opportunities to help our youth because our schools need it. Our funding has been cut, and that's why we're relying on too many international students. And as immigration has become too rapid, we see our colleges suffering. So we need to pace ourselves again. We need to get back to the table, and we need to remember that when someone breaks your trust twice, you can't trust them again. If we give forward.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. So in closing, I also would like to thank a few people. I would like to thank our friends from Rogers TV. I would like to thank our friends from Heart FM. I'd like to thank Unifor Local 636 Union and Politics Committee for organizing this. And I'd like to thank all the candidates for participating. But most importantly of all, I'd like to thank all of you as voting constituents for attending and not behaving, let's say. So thank you very much. I will vote for you guys as well. So thank you very much. Please be sure to vote on February 27th. Thank you.